Hello and welcome back for another timeless video. Today we're going to be revisiting this Turbo Reanimator deck. I want to test out this new card from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle set, Raph Mikey Troublemakers. This is a 7-mana 7/7 with Trample and Haste, and states that whenever it attacks, we get to reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal a creature card, and then we can put that card onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So essentially, we're going to be getting 2 bodies for the cost of 1. Since Raph and Mikey is legendary, we're only playing 1 of them so that we don't hit it with the trigger, and we can always get additional value from it, at least on the first attack. In order to slot this in the deck, we shaved 1 of the Sire of Insanity, a card that doesn't really stack well, so having 1 fewer in the deck means that we're less likely to double it up. The rest of the deck remains unchanged. We're still running 3 Gisheth, Sun's Avatar, and then as our dinosaur package for Gisheth's ability, we have 4 Galta, Stampede Tyrant, which is a great reanimation target to dump the creatures in our hand into the battlefield, and then 4 Tyrannix Rex, which can quickly close games by itself. Ward 4 often means that it is going to be hexproof. And the last reanimation target we have in our deck is Iona. If we're coming up against a monocolor deck, this can win the game by itself, and oftentimes against multicolor decks, we can still shut down our opponent's game plan long enough to win the game. In order to get these cards into our graveyard, we have 4 copies of Divest that we can use to discard ourselves, similar with Thoughtseize, and then 4 copies of Entomb, where we can pull a creature from our deck and put it into our graveyard. Then from there, we'll be looking to use Reanimate or Life Death to bring the creature back. We have 4 copies of Chrome Mox as fast mana to try and combo off on turn 1 or 2, similar with the 4 copies of Dark Ritual. And then the rest of the cards in the deck are lands. We have a handful of MBFCs that we can pitch under Chrome Mox or play as land. So Boggart Trawler, Agadeem's Awakening, and Fell the Profane. And then the rest of the cards are swamps. I'm hoping that we can have Raph and Mikey in our hand naturally during the games and test its functionality that way. I don't know if it makes sense to Entomb Reanimate it yet. We'll have to wait and see how that feels during the gameplay. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. This hand has Entomb, but no Reanimate. Unfortunate. This one technically functions. We would have to shock ourselves twice. 8 damage through Thoughtseize. Wouldn't leave us very much breathing room. We'll give it a try for science. Has Raph and Mikey in it, so we can give it a try. And then we will actually, our opponent concedes. They must have thought we were on Oops All Spells. On to the next. This hand is fantastic. We'll keep. Bolt ourselves. Play out the Dark Ritual. Doesn't look like there was any response there from our opponent. And then Galto will let us put Sire in. 18 power, and you get to discard your hand. Emrakul will shuffle back in, but that shouldn't make a difference. From what I saw there, it looked like our opponent was on show and tell, so they don't stand a chance. Good game. This hand is missing a Reanimate spell. We'll mulligan. Similar with this hand. Down to 5 cards. We'll keep this one. Then we don't need the Chrome Mox. We can get rid of the Thoughtseize. So here we can play out a tap land. And then on turn 2, we can divest and reanimate in the same turn. This hides what we're doing a little bit. Strip Mine's going to change that plan. I was going to say it hides what we're doing so that our opponent has less information to work on. And then here we have a choice, either Iona or Rex. I think we'll try the Rex here in case our opponent plays out an ambiguous land, so we don't know what colors they're playing. And that's enough for the win. Unfortunately, we don't have any way to get a card into our graveyard. We'll mulligan. Similar problem here. We'll keep this, put back the creatures, probably put back Life Death. Black, Dark Ritual. Are they going to discard us? Nope, just start off on a Barragoyf. That's beatable. The Troll Cycle increases the size of Barragoyf. Attack in. Let's see what they hit here. Some Graveyard Hate, the One Ring. Need to dodge a Dark Ritual this turn, and we do. So we'll entomb, and here we're going to test out Raph and Mikey. I know that something like Iona would probably be better, but we're here to test. And our opponent just concedes, so unfortunately we don't get to see what it hits and how powerful it is. Good game. This hand just doesn't function. Neither does this one. Here we have a Reanimate and a Thoughtseize, Divest. We'll give it a try, and I think we need 2 lands here, so we'll put the Thoughtseize back. Rather try and combo off all in the same turn with this hand. Thoughtseize is going to take our Reanimate. And a second Divest here means that we can check our opponent's hand. They are on some type of graveyard strategy. We'll take one of their Stitcher suppliers. Dark Ritual doesn't help us here. Looking for one of our 7 remaining Reanimate spells. Our opponent is also looking for a Reanimate. Notably, if we get one first, we will definitely be taking their Broodlord, and then we can use that to grab another Reanimate from our deck and cast it the same turn using Convoke. This one's going to come down to who top decks better. Although our opponent does have a couple creatures on the board, so they are able to push damage in the meantime, making our Reanimates worse. Hive of the Eye Tyrant will eventually be online as well. Don't think there's any mono black tech that could get them out of this, although now they're putting cards in that would help us even more if we get a Reanimate. Thoughtseize, so we'll entomb here, make sure we have a creature in the graveyard, even though we're likely going for theirs. And we're going to take Raph and Mikey here. Doesn't really matter which one they take. We can cast all the cards in our deck with 2 lands. although we are running out of time. Eventually, the Shambling Ghast and Stitcher Supplier and Hive of the Eye Tyrant will do enough damage to us where we can no longer reanimate. Which I believe this is going to be the last turn of the game. Unfortunate. We're going to take 5 here down to 6, and then Reanimate will be turned off. We don't have Persist in our deck. This hand can present a turn 1 Galta. Don't have anything else to put in on it right now. See what we draw into. There are a lot of good hits in our deck. Depending on what color our opponent's on, we might wait a turn. Black. Well, Entomb is going to be better. So we'll Dark Ritual. Unfortunately, we can't check our opponent's hand first. And I think we're just going to test out Raph and Mikey. Again, Iona on black would probably win the game here. Wow, that looks terrible. And then we get Iona anyway. So that worked out in our favor. Then we'll go right into combat before our opponent concedes. They would have to discard their hand if they weren't already dead. Good game. This hand is pretty good. We'll keep. Turn 1, we can hold up Entomb. Turn 2, we can try to cast Death to bring it back. Most likely getting Galta here with the 3 creatures in her hand. It would be the strongest, but we'll wait to see what our opponent does before making a decision. Shocky and a Fellmire. And they have a Grief. Unfortunate. We're still going to Entomb here. We can always top deck a Reanimate spell. And let the record show that, again, Iona probably wins the game. Our opponent's probably mono black. Our opponent might have a Reanimate of their own, in which case we would have lost anyway. They don't. So we'll Thoughtseize them, try and disrupt their game plan. They are on a spy deck, so we can't take the spy here because they'll just use life death on it. So we're forced to take the Dark Ritual. This will at least slow them down by a couple turns, hopefully. Divest is also a discard card. We would need a second Thoughtseize. And now they find a Dark Ritual. Let's see how many Creeping Chill. 4 Creeping Chill. That's going to beat us. We won't be able to reanimate anymore. Nope. This would be a great poker hand, but not so good magic. So we'll mulligan. We can do a Iona in the dark here. And we'll put the Chromox back. Well, yeah, we'll keep 2 lands. Seagram Coast. I only have 1 Thoughtseize here, so we have to just try and jam. And we'll name white, since that's going to be their removal spell color. In theory, I suppose they could bounce it with a blue card, but we're not as worried about that. Not in Timeless. And that's enough for the victory. On to the next. This hand is missing a reanimation effect. This is better. And we can do it all on turn 1. We'll put the Tyrant back in the deck. See if our Chrome Mox resolves. That was pretty quick. Do Entomb next. And we get Raph and Mikey here. Reanimate. Hit in. And then we're going to name black most played color in the format. One with an Elegant Parlor. They're all tapped out here, so they're going to lose. Good game. This hand is painful, but it functions. Up against a Stompy deck. Blood Moon would pretty much shut us down at the moment. We don't have a Mox or a Swamp in our hand. Chalice on 1 is fine. And really, Iona is going to win the game here. Alright, we'll make the correct play as opposed to the fun play. Shock in again. And use Death on Iona, name red. And our opponent concedes. Good game. Dark Ritual, Entomb, Reanimate. This is a keep. Mishra's Bauble and Chrome Mox. Could be Affinity. Could be Control. See if a show and tell happens here. It does. We can put in Galta. Unfortunately, we don't have anything else to follow up with. Let's see here if we Entomb, we could go for Iona named Blue. Could also get Raph and Mikey. I think Iona's the safest choice. And then, are we winning the race? We are, so we'll attack in. They need to bounce both creatures this turn, and they can only cast colorless spells. So that does it. Good game. This hand is pretty good. We'll keep. Turn 1, we have to bolt ourselves with the Trawler, play Divest to discard Galta. Should be a pretty good turn next turn if our opponent doesn't disrupt what we're doing. Opponent is roping us. Looks like they don't have a counter to what we're doing. And they're on energy. So we can dump both of our creatures into play here, and this is probably lethal. No, we just hit a Trawler. That's one interaction I did not think about when I put Raph and Mikey in the deck. Alright, so there you have the deck. We got to see Raph and Mikey in action in a handful of games, and it didn't disappoint. For the most part, anything that we hit off of it seemed to be very strong. However, in that very last matchup, we did run into a case where we hit a Bogart Trawler, which initially I had not identified as a potential. So maybe going back and looking at the mana base, we either substitute that out for another MDFC, or we remove the Trawler entirely and replace it with 4 black lands, which would have a small impact on our pitchable cards to Chrome Mox. Back to Raph and Mikey though, it did seem like this was a good use of the card. Creating 2 bodies with 1 also means that if our opponent is able to untap, they would need to use double removal spells. Whereas previously, if you put in something like a Sire of Insanity and your opponent top decks a Swords to Plowshares or something and they already have a land in play, they can stabilize the game. Whereas the double body from Raph and Mikey means that they need a more specific answer. I still think this deck remains one of the stronger decks in Timeless Best of 1, and while it's expensive to build, if you have the wild cards and you like winning, I would definitely recommend it. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.